Hey, what's up guys? It's Prison Mike coming out with another video for you. Thought I would go over the officer equipment. There's the new warfare officer equipment that's available. It's been a couple weeks now. Had a chance to go through a lot of it, confirm that I have all the right information on it, and it really can add a considerable amount of meaningful stats and benefits to your officer. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to go over this in some detail, explain the do's and the don'ts. Hopefully I'll be able to walk through everything and then give you guys an idea of how to upgrade these things regardless of the type of player that you are. That'll be best to optimize and benefit you and give you a chance to wreck whoever you fight against. If you're somebody who doesn't spend a lot of money, I think it'll just be a good way to even more so prioritize what to do and what not to do early on. And as always, like, subscribe guys, it helps me a lot if you can do that, so I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment if you have questions below. I have some spreadsheets I may end up attaching too, but I'm going to go over all the information here anyways, so you'll be able to just reference this. And so without any more delays, just getting into this here. So your officers, it's all the warfare officers down here, and you can see even there it says the equipment upgrade right there. So clicking on an officer, let me get into this actually. So to start out, if you haven't upgraded anything, it's going to look like you see here with Kingsley, who obviously I have not upgraded. On the bottom left of the screen, there's these equipment details here you can click on. There's going to be, for every officer, there's one offensive and one defensive equipment piece, although that doesn't actually correlate, as you'll see, with necessarily the stats that it gives. But this is what it looks like, this gray box with the little green arrow. So you have to activate the skill by using these equipment alloy that I'll show you in a minute. Once you do that, then the skill, the equipment piece will become active. You don't have to assign it or anything like that. It's just active. These two pieces are active when you pay for them to be level 1. And I'll show you how it works as we go up level to level. I'll actually go right through. I have one officer left that I think is only level 5 too. So I'm gonna just upgrade them right on this video so you guys can see that as well. Hopefully that'll help just see the process. But it looks like this to start with. So just basically just two little stats, see there, nothing. That will contrast then to, so level 5, you see here there are now 3 stats that are active. So as you upgrade these things, it gets up to 3 stats that are active here, and each officer's equipment piece will have a unique 3 stats that are active that I'll go through. And then once you get to level 10 for this base equipment, and you'll see that there's actually equipment expertise that becomes available, and that's going to be this here that gives you another stat at level 10, which requires separate items to upgrade. And then at level 15, the final one is this 3rd equipment piece here, which will give you another really good stat, and they all vary for each officer. So I'll walk through which ones have which stats, which benefits, and then how to prioritize and upgrade these things as well. So as you can see, there's some new items that you need. They're available in a couple of places. So in the, let me walk through, if you go over to the officers here, so these equipment alloy are what's necessary to get the actual equipment item up from level 1 to 15 to 16 and so on, all the way up. And they're available here in the officers boxes. They're also available in the daily rally ruins. There's a new one that's added. If you get to the max level for that, you can get 10 per attack. So that's 20 a day or 140 a week. So you basically can get 140 of those a week. And then you can see as it's just shuffling through on its own here. This one here is the Essence Stone. That's for that first of the second tier of those expert equipment stats. So that's this one here, the Equipment Essence Stone that you'll need for that. And the item will unlock either all troop attack or all troop HP and defense. And I'll show you that with each one individually too, so you can see which one does what. But that's the next piece. That is going to be available in that rally ruins as well. You can get 1 to 2 per attack, so a total of 2 to 4 per day, or 14 to 28 of them a week. If you participate in the zombie uprising, where you protect your alliance protects their flags from those zombies once a week, and you score in that, it's pretty easy to get if you're not brand new to the game. There's a point requirement, but you can get up to 20 more from that too. So figure you can get probably about 20 a week on average from the rally at the ruins, and then I would add another 20 from the zombie uprising, so you can get about 40 a week or so on average, give or take. So the other one then is this here, which is the Essence Core. These I'm not aware of anywhere that you can get them for free. I think you just have to buy them right now, and they're available in this officer area. They're also in the weekly specials you can see here, and I think you get 6 of them for $4 here, or it's like 7 for $5 for the lowest level pack in the other officer area that you can buy the boxes. So they're not really free anywhere. At some point, I don't know, I'm assuming Camo will make them somewhat available, at least to people who don't pay, but right now it's all about obviously trying to get as much money as they can from this news, so they're not making them super available to people who don't want to pay for them. You can get a pretty limited amount, about 140 per week, as I mentioned, which is not quite, so that 140 a week of the actual alloy is about enough to get up to level 5. I think it's 144 of the alloy to go from activating it at level 0 up to level 5. So you're not quite going to be able to, from just the free amount, get 1 hero per week up to level 5. So it's not great. It's not ideal. It takes some time. More of a benefit though are those essence stones, which you can actually get, as we talked about, 20-ish from the ruins, another 20 from the zombie uprising, so about 40 per week, which can get you up through about level 3, I want to say, or 4 maybe, in the that second tier of expert equipment. So anyways, that's just the overall description. Each individual officer we can go through, because I'll show you what you want to do for them and how you want to prioritize them. Each one has their own specific set of stats here, as you can see. And so the attack piece here, you can see I have it already at level 15. The reason for that is just some of them have these, again, the second of the equipment expertise is really good. So I have that at a pretty high premium because of how important it is. So anyway, the 30 stats that you unlock here are long range attack, the HP and defense of the melee troops, and then biochemical zombie attack. This one, and then there's one with Alexandria that is the best 3 stats, and that's because it's LR plus melee HP and defense. That combination is the best if you're long range. There's also a version of that for middle range. There are two middle range and HP as melee HP as well that I'll show you. So those are if you're mid range, you want to go for those ones. If you're long range, you want this one, and the Alexandrias is the ones to prioritize initially. Again, once you get up to level 10, you'll see that you can unlock this equipment expertise. And for the attack item here, it gives you, you'd think it would give you the all attack, but it doesn't. It gives you actually the all troop HP and defense. This is what I mean. It's not like super intuitive as to if you do the attack item, you get all attack. No, it's actually defense for this one. So you can see that there, and you can just screenshot these things for reference too. And then really importantly, you get the long range killer, which is increased damage to long range troops by your army. So that's probably the third tier of this most elite grouping of expert equipment. We'll go through each one, but this is probably the third best tier. There's going to be 2 above this one to prioritize. And again, this actual set of base stats, though, if you're long range, is the top one to go for. So the other thing that Zeus offers is going to be the defensive piece here, which gives you mid-range attack, HP and defense of long-range troops, and then all disruptor resistance. So just really quickly, disruptor resistance is something that they've probably implemented in this game, I would guess, because the disruptor stat is actually really quite overpowered in some of these strong planes. And so that comes up about once you become a purple level. Let me just show you here. So once you get to purple, you get this disruptor here stat, and that it fires from some different skills throughout the purple and yellow planes. But what it basically does is it neutralizes the special ability of your troops for 8 seconds if it fires and is active on them. So for 8 seconds, they won't be able to cast their special skill. So like for instance, if you're mid-range build and you have the rocket launchers, the overshoot skill, which can deal a ton of damage to the further back middle or long range troops every third attack, like that wouldn't be able to fire for that 8 seconds. The other thing it does is if it hits the Titans, and is active on them, it prevents them from casting any skills for 3 seconds. So this is actually much more of a significant impact, because if you think about how many really good benefits your Titans have, their actual attack in and of itself is not that valuable. It's all the other skills they're firing to add shields, add buffs, add debuffs, all that stuff. And so if you're disrupting those Titans and they can't fire for 3 seconds, then their skills aren't active for that 3 second period. And as you can imagine, throughout a fight, if that happens multiple times, it can be a really overpowered skill for somebody who has really strong planes. And so this is meant to help neutralize some of that and make it a little less likely that the disruptor stat will fire. So it's probably going to be increasingly more important the further along you are in the game. If you're in a newer nation and most people don't have purple planes yet, prioritizing that skill doesn't make a lot of sense yet. But if you're an end stage player or somebody who's in an older nation and everybody and their mom has a purple plane, then people are going to have this disruptor stat, and more people are going to be using it frequently in their fights. And so neutralizing or negating some of that is actually much more important. So it just depends how far along you are in the game and the people you're fighting. Like being, I think, the third oldest globe right now, I want to say, like 1082, the people in my nation that have gold planes is one. It's our surveyor, our top person, and then the rest of us have purple or blue planes still. There's probably 10 people maybe that have purple planes right now, I'm gonna guess, around there, give or take. So not that many people really. And so you can imagine, even for someone like me, having a ton of disruptor stats, if I was in my own nation, is not that important. That being said, you do fight a lot of people in other events, and since I'm pretty active trying to fight stronger people generally, it does help me quite a bit, because I'm usually always fighting people who have better planes than I do, since that's not something I prioritize that much relative to the officers and things. And so it's, for me, it's definitely worth having more and more of that, especially as I am further into the game and time progresses, because more and more people again will have that. So just that's somewhat brief explanation of that disruptor. So going back into Zeus here, so as you can see, I don't have the third of the stat groupings, that second equipment expertise item available yet, and that's by intention, because it's basically the mini water bar. So what they've done, what Camel's done with this, is they've had a group of different stat items come out for these third tier officers. There are a couple really good ones that will have effects on damage of troops, which is by far the most important thing to keep in mind and to consider. What they've also done, for better or worse, is they've taken some of the Aquarium items and they've basically taken those special stats or skills and applied them directly to the expert equipment pieces that you can unlock with those gold core items. So the way I think about this, though, the mini water bar, just to show you what that actually does then, in the island here. So I have a fair amount, I have all these pretty much equipment items, island items, but they are about $500 for the good ones to unlock. So as you'll see, for all the ones that we'll go through, I have it level 1, because it's just not worth it otherwise. I've kind of realized, as trying it and getting it unlocked, it's just not worth it at all to do that, I don't think, long term, relative to the other things you would get for that amount of money. So that being said, the mini water bar gives the shield for the Titans and the plane. So at the start of the battle, Titans and warplanes are going to get this energy protective shield that resists their HP times 3.6% damage. So it is nice, it blocks damage, not just attack, for the first 10 seconds though. So remember that it lasts 10 seconds only. So the reason that is not very beneficial, I have found, is because most of the time when you're fighting somebody, in the first 10 seconds, your Titans and plane are taking very little damage, right? There's a whole bunch of melee troops taking most of the damage, hopefully, and then you have your mid-range and long-range troops all kind of in the way. So the Titans and plane will take some incidental damage from special skills, from like some of the officer breakthrough skills, stuff like that, for the first 10 seconds. But the amount of damage they take, if you go back and you just look through old fights and see how much they've taken the first 10 seconds, it's usually a relatively negligible amount. So it's not that this stat doesn't have some benefit, but it's pretty minor. Any fight where you're fighting somebody who's roughly even strength as you, there's a lot of things that will help benefit you and give you a chance to win more than this individual item will. I haven't seen it be very effective, to be honest. If somebody's getting through and hitting your Titans and playing a ton with damage in the first 10 seconds, they're probably way stronger than you anyways, and it doesn't matter, because that little teeny shield is not going to make any bit of difference in that type of fight. So it's just, I think it's the least important of the island items to focus on from these skills that you'll actually get from the warfare officers. That being said, it's nice that this is a much cheaper way to get some of these things if you're interested in it than it would be to spend the $500 to unlock it, right? So they're just really expensive and it's not worth it. But now you could, if you really were interested, get these things for a much cheaper value with the officers. Although again, as I'll go through, there's much more important ones to focus on. So just briefly, again, to kind of summarize this, I think that the actual submachine gun has the equipment expertise item, that's the long range killer, is probably like the third best tier. So I really focus on that one in kind of middle quality. But this one here, when you unlock it, that item is just not, the water bar is not very important. Duel of Dominance is probably one of the few places when you have just your Titans and your plane left and you're getting through people. Having that big shield on you is much more important because it protects you through the whole fight, and that first 10 seconds you're taking damage immediately. So if you're a late stage player and you really like Triangle Wars, Duel of Dominance, stuff like that, then it makes more sense to have this at a high level, and it will actually be pretty meaningful. But most people, that's just not what they're focusing on, and you don't need to focus on that. So I would prioritize some other things that I think, again, much more important. So the next one, Alexandria here. So as I mentioned already, this is the mechanical hold item, and you can see it increases the HP and defense of your melee troops, long range attack, and all troop disruptor. So this is probably the most important one besides maybe the Zeus one I just showed you, that gives you this combination if you're long range of long range attack, HP defense, and melee defense there, and then the disruptor effect. So that might be, if you're also in an older nation, even more important than the attack of the zombies. Whereas again, a newer nation, you're probably not needing the disruptor resistance as much yet. It might be better to focus on the Zeus one. So, but these are the top two to focus on getting up to level 5, certainly, to get these things active, and the first one's to prioritize getting up to like level 10 until you're ready to go to that second tier of the expertise items. So anyways, then you can see here, it's pretty self-explanatory. The equipment expertise first thing that unlocks is going to be the defense and HP of all troops. And then the next thing you get is this resistance or reduced damage from long-range troops. And this is a second tier, I would say, item for this grouping of equipment expertise. The reason I say that is because you want to prioritize reducing the damage taken from long range and middle range over dealing damage to them. The reason is they're damage dealing troops, and so you want to debuff that the entire time if possible. They're not strong tanky troops where you need to increase the attack to them. They're pretty easy to kill usually throughout a fight. It's just getting through the melee and getting to them. So it's much better to reduce the damage and prioritize that from long range or mid range, ideally both, as much as you can. And then once you're through their front row, you will be able to wreck them regardless of if you have the extra increased damage to those troops or not. That's not as important. You want to negate the damage they do throughout the fight more so. So the second tier of items to focus on would be the long range damage reduction, so reducing damage taken from long range and reducing damage taken from middle range. Those are the same in my mind as far as like a tier 2, the second most important of these last expertise stats to focus on, if that makes sense to everybody. So I would focus on this one, I think, as a pretty much top priority for somebody who's spending money and can get up to the gold level here with a level 15 and then start to unlock those. But again, it takes these essence core, which are not necessarily cheap. And I just thought I would actually, since I'm here, I just want to show you guys what actually happens when you upgrade, because I have enough here of these alloy to upgrade from 5 to 10 at least, just so you can see. And so actually from 5 to 10, it takes 380 of these alloy, as you'll be able to see here, to upgrade to that. So you just upgrade level 6, and you can see it goes up to 0.6% for each of these things. Because I'm not mid-range attack, it's not that important for me to focus on this one. That's why I kind of left this one to last, but it's fine to unlock. Reason being, as you go up, you can see now at level 8, it shows you the equipment expertise that will be unlocked at level 10, so you can't get it yet, but you can see which one it is, although I'm showing you all these anyways. And then 9 and 10. So at level 10, it becomes active, and then you still have to activate it, so you still have to pay for it as with all these things, but you can activate this here, and it takes 10, and then it takes 6, and then 10, and then 16, and then 24, and so forth. So it gets pretty expensive to level these things up, but my amount of these available, I've been able to pretty much get all of them up to around level 7 to 8. I'm just going to take this one up to like level 5 so you guys can see the amount that it costs. So you can see it gets all the way up to 34 there, and then it'll be 46, then 58, then 70. So it gets really expensive as you go up in the cost of these things, and you're getting about 40 of them a week if you're not paying any money at all. But you can see it gives some nice stats to your overall base stats, and this is even in your nation too. It's not cross nation, so these are just base stats whether you're in your nation or not, that can really make a big difference in the long run. So now I have the Alexandria here at level 10. As you can see, if I keep going up to I believe level 13, it'll unlock and show you at least the second grouping of elite equipment available, that requires the essence core. But I'm not going to do that right now because it's just not that important. So her rifle actually unlocks the movie theater. So I'll just show you. It's the equivalent of the movie theater's stat. So let me find the movie theater I have here. It should be this one, yeah. So this one is the guard special effect. So just to clarify too, when you unlock these, it doesn't add this item into your island. It just gives you that same item effect that can stack with if you already have them at your island as well. But it doesn't add the movie theater to your island. It just gives you the same effect. And since I don't have it unlocked, I'm just showing you this way. So it basically gives you the guard special effect. So again, for the first 10 seconds of battle, always the 2 troops with the most units in the mid range and long range get their attack times 3 of a shield. So that'll go up as you level it up, but basically attack times 3 of a shield. So this is probably the second best of the aquarium items to focus on, I would say. That is because, especially if you're mid-range, it does help protect your troops from a decent little bit of damage. You get a nice little shield for the first 10 seconds. If I was a mid-range build, I would prioritize that more so than I do if I'm long-range, only because your mid-range are definitely taking more damage throughout the entire fight and you're losing more troops than your long-range, who hopefully, if you've set your actual fleet up appropriately, are being protected for a large part of the battle from taking extra damage from the enemies, and it's all kind of just being focused in on your front row ideally, and certainly not on your back row attack dealing units. So again, this is the rifle here for Alexandria. So you can see mid-range attack, biochemical zombie attack, increase HP and defense at long range. You get this attack of all troops, and then you basically get that movie theater effect, which gives you 10 seconds of a shield on your middle range and long range with the most troops. It gives them a shield times their attack times 3. So that is Alexandria. And then let's see, who do we want to go over next? I guess Tifa's next here. So Tifa's submachine gun attack for your long range, HP and defensive mid-range troops, and then zombie attack, you can see there. And then also it gives you at level 10 the increased attack to all troops. So that is the submachine gun. And then I will go over, so I guess actually I already went over the mini water bar, but that is what Tifa's submachine gun gives you, is the mini water bar. So that was the Titans and plane getting a shield that protects from damage for the first 10 seconds. So that's the mini water bar for that one. So I need to go over that again. And then here for her other tactical ring, which is like, I guess, the defensive item, if you want to call it that, that gives you mid-range attack, increased HP and defense of melee troops, and all troop disruptor. So if you're a mid-range player, a mid-range build, this here is probably the most important one to focus on initially, right? Because it gives you mid-range attack and then HP and defense of your melee troops, plus this disruptor resistance. So this is probably the most important one if you're a mid-range build to focus on right here, at least for the first 5 levels, and then prioritizing this getting up till you're getting into those expert equipment benefits, which again, all of them are the same for the first of the advanced equipment items, and that's increased defense of HP and HP of your troops, which you can see here. The other one that unlocks at level 15 then, the more, I guess, second or advanced tier item that unlocks for her is going to be the, let me look here. The tactical ring is actually, I believe, going to give you increased, I'm going to have to look at my spreadsheet because I don't remember this one off the top of my head here. Bear with me one second, because it's not one I have unlocked yet. Hold up one second, guys. Sorry about this delay, but I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me, of course, and I thought I had them all memorized, and I don't. So anyway, let me pull this up here. For Tifa's ring, her tactical bag is reduced damage from Titans, that's right. So that one is reduced damage from Titans. So your troops will take reduced damage from the enemy's Titans. Next then is going to be Aeon. And so you can see here with her katana, which is her attack item, it gives you mid-range attack, biochemical zombie attack boost, and then melee HP and defense. So again, if you're in a mid-range build, this would be the other thing to focus on right here, because it gives you mid-range attack and then melee HP and defense. So this would be the other one to focus on early if you're a mid-range and not a long-range build. So, and then the next of the equipment expertise is going to give you the HP and defense of all troops, and then the other stat that I don't have unlocked yet is going to be, for her, it was the I want to say basketball court. So let me show you that one too, which is this right here, which is the shield breaker effect. So this one gives you attack of all troops by 2% and increased damage when attacking shielded units by 3%. And obviously each time you upgrade this, it's going to go up more and more, right? So you'll get more attack added and more damage to shielded troops. This is really helpful in events like Duel of Dominance and Triangle Wars, because this shield breaker effect, where this increased damage percentage, as you level that up, it basically is going to negate the Aeon shield, which is incredibly powerful. You've seen everybody, they activate that, hopefully if they know what they're doing, before the event starts and when they're assigning their troops, and that way you have this nice, now usually a purple bubble looking shield thing that really helps protect against a lot of damage early in fights and makes it really hard for people to get through your front row or deal much damage to them. So this will help negate that the higher up it is. But other than that, it's not that important because you don't have shields on your troops that often. Otherwise, it's just giving a little bit of attack increase. So it's still not that important of a skill to have for the vast majority of people outside of those niche events or random times when they do have it active. Like, for instance, during Polar Wars, a lot of times people will activate it, the Aeon skill too, for that. So it can help, definitely, but it's just that 1 hour of time that the shield is active is so infrequently used that I don't know that it really adds all that much of a benefit, again, relative to some of the other stats, and that's why I wouldn't focus on or prioritize it, I don't think, over a lot of these other things. So then getting back into Aeon here again. So her other item is here, which I have, which is the actual Ghost Face Ninja, and that's long range attack, HP and defense of your mid-range troops, all troop disruptor resistance, and then the expert items is the increased attack to all troops here, and then reduced damage from mid-range troops. So this is again that second tier as far as how I would prioritize them. You have the reduced damage taken from mid-range troops, reduced damage taken from long-range troops, which I'll show you in another one of the other officers, and those are probably the most important ones besides the one I'm saving for the end, which is the increased damage to melee. So anyway, this is a good one to focus on for the second grouping again of these equipment expertise stats, if you're going to be able to get those. But since they're not free, if you're spending no money at all, I wouldn't worry about that anyways at this point. So the next officer then is Panda. So getting to Panda here, so the rocket launcher for Panda, as you can see, pretty self-explanatory: mid-range attack, HP and defensive long range, and then zombie attack, right? And then the expert equipment, you get increased attack by all of your troops, and then mid-range killer, so increased damage to mid-range troops. So remember, I put that was like the tier 3. So reducing damage from mid-range and long range is kind of the second tier to focus on, and increasing damage to mid-range and long range is kind of the third tier down as far as focusing on them, because it's still important, but not as important as some of the other things. And then the defensive item for Panda here is the Tiger Amulet, and that is long range attack, HP and defensive mid-range troops, and all disruptor resistance. And then you get the increased defense and HP as the first of the equipment expertise, which makes sense. And then the other item you get for him is the basketball court again. So Panda, the Tiger Amulet, has the same effect, that basketball court effect, which it's nice to have the increased attack and the damage to the shield, but again, because it's not active that often in battles, I don't know that it's worth focusing on that highly. And then the last but not least, actually most importantly, really. So this is the Stormbow. He's got the long range attack, biochemical zombie attack, and HP and defensive melee troops, the first. And then the expertise you see is increased damage and HP of all troops. And then the last one, and this is the tier 1. This is the most important thing to focus on. If you're getting if you're buying items and you're spending money to upgrade them, this is the first thing you want to focus on as far as this last grouping of skills that you can get available, and that's the melee killer. And so it increases damage to melee troops. And so you can see I've actually gone up to 10 on this one, and I think that's by far the most important. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. So you can tell how important this is because the my plane again is pretty average, but if I go to the plane here and I look at the very end stage, last tier, epic stat. So the very last thing you unlock with the plane is increased damage to melee troops by your army, right? That's the very last thing you can get in this gold or yellow tier. So that means you have to spend a ton of money to maximize your plane to get to this, right? So that's how important this is. You can kind of just tell from how much you'd have to spend to unlock it otherwise how valuable it is. And so I don't think anyone would question or would argue that that's not the most important thing to upgrade first and foremost. And that's, again, this melee killer stat here, which is the damage to melee troops, because everyone who fights and knows what they're doing is going to have a pretty large amount of those melee front row protecting their damage dealing troops. And so getting through those, burning through those faster than your opponent does and start hitting their damage dealing troops before they're through your melee is one of the best things you can do to win a fight. How you do that depends on your stats and your fleet, your build, all those things. But this is one of the most important and impactful ways to be able to really put a lot of damage and pressure on burning through the opponent's front row. So I would focus on this by far as the number one priority, in my opinion. The other thing that he has here, so for his defensive combat armor, it's mid-range attack, increase HP and defense of long-range troops. They're all troop resistance for the disruptor effect, and then increase attack of all troops. And then he gives you the Aquarium, so the increased HP of the melee troops, and melee troops will share 1.1% of other troops damage. That's at level 2. So each time you upgrade it, you can see it adds a little bit. So you get like 0.6% and 0.3% increases in this. I think that this is probably the most important of the, if you're gonna upgrade an Aquarium based item, trying to get that unlocked, I think this is probably the most important one. The Aquarium is first and foremost the one you'd want to unlock over the like basketball court effect, the movie theater, or the mini water bar. Obviously you can do whatever you think is best for your situation. The reason being is just your melee troops, your front row troops, the whole point of them is to just absorb damage and protect the other troops, right? So this just enhances that effect. It gives them a little HP, which is fine, but then it also just lets them take a percent of the actual damage, not the attack, but the overall damage, right? Which can be a pretty meaningful amount, even though it's like 1%. When you think of like the 100 million damage in one hit that troops can take, it can still take, you know, 1 million damage. It can take a meaningful amount to help protect your other troops, and that's the whole point of these troops, right? The front row is to take that damage and protect the other troops. So all it really does is just enhance that effect a bit and protects them from some of the other damage from breakthrough skills, titans, other things that are kind of getting through the front row during the fight to hit your troops to preserve those titans, planes, and damage dealing troops. So that is why I thought that was the most important one to try to prioritize if you're going to. But again, as I already mentioned, I think the most important way to prioritize those third grouping of skills, those epic skills that you see here in the orange, would be to focus on first and foremost Stormbow's tactical bow, as I mentioned, right? So that is by far in a way I think the most important. And then the other ones are going to be the decreasing the damage dealt by mid-range and long-range. And then like the third tier would be increasing the damage to long-range as well as mid-range. And then I would probably add in that tier, I forgot to include Tifa's, but the decrease in damage from Titans is pretty important too. So that is also beneficial. And that is something that the planes also give you. So the planes increase damage to Titans and decrease damage from the enemy Titans as well. That is something the planes also offer. but I think that stacking that is helpful because they do deal quite a bit of damage with their attacks and special effects. So that's probably a third tier item, and then I would kind of go from there down into like the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth tiers, being like those, again, the aquarium related items and which ones you want or need. And I think the aquarium item is probably the most important, which is the Stormbow combat power, and then the basketball court is the katana from Aeon and Panda's amulet, and then the movie theater is Alexandria sharpshooter rifle, and the mini bar is the Zeus blade bracelet, and then Tifa's micro submachine gun. So that's where I'm at with probably like the order of prioritizing these tertiary stats and how I'd focus on upgrading them to get the most out of it from my experience and what I actually do, which is mostly like a lot of the kill events and other events focused on that, just like anyone else. So the other thing just to mention, the way I would think about upgrading this stuff as far as like the first 5 levels, 10 levels and stuff, where you're trying to focus on those first 3 stats that you're getting, is what I kind of mentioned before, which is if you're mid-range, you want to focus on the ones that do mid-range and melee the combo, or if you're long-range, the long-range attack and melee combo, right? The easiest way you could do this is just, there's basically 5 skills that you're getting, or I shouldn't say that, there's 8, I think. So you get mid-range attack and melee HD, which is your defense. I just call it HD, your health and your defense, just to make it faster. So you get long-range attack, mid-range attack, melee HD, and then you get long-range HD, mid-range HD, zombie attack, the troop disruptor resistance. So that grouping of all those skills, I would just rank them, 3 being the best, 2 being the second best, and 1 being like the worst. And then just add up the points for each of these to see how you want to prioritize them. It sounds silly, but that's the easiest way to do it, and that's what I would do, just to make it more objective. So like if you're long range build, long range attack and melee HD would be where you want to prioritize. And then the number 2 point wise would probably be long range HD, zombie attack, and troop disruptor resistance. You could actually even put probably the mid-range HD in there, because a lot of times you're going to have some of those mid-range troops in to help take damage and further protect your long-range attack troops. So and then you could just basically put mid-range attack as the 1 point item. And so if you assign it like that for long range, then you can just go through and add up the overall stats for each of those officers, and whichever ones have the most points, focus on getting those up from 1 to 5, and then the second grouping and the third grouping and so forth. So that's probably what I would recommend doing. Same with if you're long range, if you're mid range, it'd probably be the mid range attack and then melee HD, right? You could probably even put your mid range HD in that top, like 3 point tier, just because you are taking a lot more damage if you're mid range early on and throughout the fight. And so having them be a bit tankier is smart, so that you don't have as many troops dying early on and they can be a bit more able to survive. So that's probably pretty reasonable. And then like your second grouping would probably be, if you're looking at prioritizing things, would be like your disruptor resistance, your zombie attack. You could even put your long range attack in there, just because for people who are mid-range builds, unfortunately, anytime you're doing other events like Medicini, the Medicini zombie events, anytime you're doing like the Doom events, things like that, long-range attack is just much better for those events. You'll score a lot higher because those troops last longer in those fights. So it's kind of a disadvantage of being mid-range, where you still have to have some long-range attack and tank and ability to fight too. And then your long-range HD would probably be your lowest priority in that tiering. And so you could just score something kind of like that based on your own personal preferences, and then just add them up and for each officer, and that'll tell you who to prioritize most. And then I gave you kind of what I think for how I would prioritize the actual officers getting into those gold tier epic items that you want to focus on, which is the melee. I can't stress enough that melee increased damage is so important. So I would really try to get that one first and foremost if you're going to actually bite the bullet and spend a little bit of money on these things. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. I know that video got a little bit long, but I just wanted to walk through kind of all that stuff, and so you can see what to do. If you guys have questions, let me know in the comments, and then please again like and subscribe if you found this helpful. I'll try to add more information. I can also add probably some spreadsheets if people want them, breaking down kind of the costs of things. So like for instance, the alloy equipment cost, it's I think 144 to go from 0 to 5 of them total, and then it's 380 to go from 5 to, or so up 6, essentially up to 10, and then from 10 to 15 I want to say it's 750. So you can see there it's several thousand to get all the way up to a level 15 character. It's not cheap to do that, and it definitely takes some time. So that's kind of where you're at, I think. If you have any questions, if you guys want any other videos, please request them. I'll do my best to get that out. Thanks for listening. All right, bye.